They say when you work in law enforcement, it's not the criminals that haunt you, but it's the quiet nights, the empty cells, the calls that never made the reports. You learn to trust your gut and ignore what you can't explain, but sometimes what you see follows you home. It was my 4th year as a cop when I got moved to the night shift at our county sheriff's office. I worked in a small town in rural Georgia, and most nights were pretty quiet. We mostly dealt with drunk drivers, a few domestic calls, and way too much paperwork. But one night changed everything I thought I knew about this job and about what's real. It started like any other shift, drinking coffee, dead silence, and the occasional crackle from the radio. Then, around 2:47 a.m., a deputy brought in a woman with no ID, no name, and no signs of injury. She wasn't talking either, just staring, and there was something off, like the air got heavier when she walked in. She wasn't yelling or fighting like most people we arrest for being drunk or causing trouble. She was quiet, way too quiet, with her eyes staring straight ahead. Her skin was pale, her long black hair was wet, and she was wearing a thin hospital gown even though it hadn't rained. The deputy said he found her walking barefoot along Highway 87, way out in the middle of nowhere. She wasn't looking around, just staring straight ahead. I was at the front desk when they brought her in. Deputy Ramirez leaned over and whispered, "Something's not right. She hasn't said a single word, not the whole ride here." And he looked nervous. This was a guy who once busted a meth lab with nothing but a baton and nerves of steel. We put her in the drunk tank, a basic holding cell with a steel bench, a toilet, and a small camera in the corner. I wrote in the intake log, female, about 30 years old, uncooperative, silent. As soon as the door closed behind her, she walked to the corner and faced the wall like a kid being punished. She didn't move nor flinch. She just stood there with her back to the camera. That's when the first strange thing happened. The hallway lights started to flicker. A low humming sound filled the air, and I'm pretty sure the temperature dropped fast, at least 10 degrees in less than a minute. Have you ever stood near a freezer when the motor turns on? That deep buzzing noise. That's what it felt like. But this time, I could feel it inside my bones. I checked the monitors. She hadn't moved an inch, but something else had. The camera feed glitched. For a quick moment, I thought I saw something or someone standing behind her. It was taller, with no face. Just a black shape, with its head tilted like it was watching her. Then, the screen went to static. When the video came back, she was alone again. I blinked and rewound the footage, but found nothing. Just her, standing still like before. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was just a glitch. But then I heard the sound. It started faint, like someone whispering just outside the glass. I turned, but there was no one there. Everyone else was either in the back office or asleep in the break room. I turned up the audio feed on the holding cell monitor and froze. It wasn't whispers. It was her voice. It was low, monotone, and it looked like she was chanting something over and over. Without much thought, I turned the volume up. Her words were distorted, but I caught pieces. Dormient, sub, cutem, Latin? It wasn't gibberish, but it didn't make sense either, and her mouth wasn't moving. I walked down to the cell trying to calm my nerves. As I approached, I heard it clear as day, her voice echoing down the hall, but inside the cell was silent. Her mouth closed, and she was still staring into the corner. I leaned close to the glass. "Ma'am, do you need medical attention?" No reply. I tapped on the window. She turned her head just slightly and whispered, "He's here." I stepped back so fast that I hit the opposite wall. A second later, the hallway lights went out, and immediately, the emergency lights turned on, filling the hallway with a dim red glow. In that red light, I saw her face pressed against the glass of the cell. Her eyes were rolled back, all white. Her mouth was wide open, like she was screaming but no sound came out. Then everything went dark. When the lights came back on, she was already sitting on the bench again, with her head down. I called for backup right away. Ramirez rushed in with his gun ready, looking around the room. She looked up at us and smiled. "You saw him," she said quietly. "Now he'll follow you home." Without wasting time, we processed her transfer to the state hospital the next morning. But here's the kicker. There's no record of her. No fingerprint match. No hospital gown inventory. No arrest report signed. The footage from the cameras? It was all gone, corrupted and just static from midnight to 4 a.m. After that incident, I thought I could forget her. I thought I could write it off as a weird night, a one-time thing. But the dreams started a week later. Every night, that same corridor, the red lights flickering, the same cell. I see myself walking toward it with my footsteps echoing louder than they should. I can't stop myself. And then I see her not sitting, but floating, with her head twisted too far, and her eyes black and weeping something that looks like oil. And always behind her. There he was. The silhouette has no face, just a long shape with arms that stretch into the dark corners of the room, watching me and trying to reach for me. One night I jolted awake and found deep dark bruises around my ankles, like someone had grabbed me. I went to see a priest. I didn't even believe in that stuff back then, but desperation changes a man. He asked me questions, a whole lot of them. When I told him the exact time he appeared at 2:47 a.m., he went pale. He said it was the veil hour. Not quite the witching hour, not quite dawn, a sliver of time where some things slip through. He gave me something to wear, a small crucifix blessed, and told me never to take it off. That night, I wore it tight against my chest. At exactly 2:47, I woke up again, but this time, I wasn't in my bed. I was back in the cell, only just that it wasn't really the cell. The walls were rotting. They moved, like they were breathing, and the lights above were burned out and leaking something hot on my skin. She was there too, sitting and still wearing the hospital gown, but her face was torn open, like someone had tried to peel it off and stopped halfway. She whispered, "You brought him." Then I saw him. He was standing right behind me. I tried to turn around, but I couldn't move. I felt his breath on my ear. Then I heard a voice I'll never forget in my life. It was low and crackling. "Your eyes will be open last." When I finally woke up, my crucifix was gone, the chain broken. I never found it, and I never got another one. I transferred out 2 months later. I took a job in dispatch. Now I sit behind a desk, no more field work, no more night shifts. When people ask why, I just say I got tired of the adrenaline. They nod and they never ask anything else, but that's not the truth. The truth is, I still feel watched. Sometimes I catch glimpses of her in the reflections of cell doors when I walk past the booking area. Sometimes I hear the whisper in the static of the radios. And every year on the same date, the anniversary of that night, I wake up at 2:47 a.m. Not because of dreams, but because of that same voice, over and over. "Your eyes will be open last." To this day, I don't talk about what I saw in that abandoned home. Not because I've forgotten, but because saying it out loud makes it feel real again. Whatever that thing was, it didn't belong in our world. And I pray it never finds its way back. When I first started in law enforcement, I thought I had a pretty solid grip on reality. You kind of have to. You can't afford to believe in ghosts or the boogeyman when you're out there dealing with criminals, meth heads, and the occasional drunken brawl. But then I got transferred to the old county station, the one people in the department joked about, but never really explained. They called it Echo Station. It had been around since the 1940s. Half of it had been renovated to modern standards. Fresh paint, clean LED lighting, security cameras, all of that stuff. But the holding cells in the basement, those were still ancient. Rusted bars, damp concrete, and a long hallway with cells on both sides, like something out of a black and white prison movie. My second week there, I was scheduled for night shift duty downstairs. Most nights were uneventful. Just drunks sobering up or someone waiting to be processed. But that night, something felt wrong the moment I walked down the basement steps. It was cold, colder than it should have been, and the hum of the overhead light buzzed in a weird rhythm. I chalked it up to old wiring, grabbed my logbook, and settled into the steel chair by the monitoring station. It faced the hallway of cells, and I could see each one through the old bars. Most were empty, except for cell 6. A man sat on the edge of the bed, head down, facing the corner. He didn't move, didn't say a word. He just sat there with his hands on his knees and shoulders hunched. I checked the log. Cell 6 wasn't listed as occupied. Probably a clerical error, I mumbled to myself. Then I called up to dispatch. "Hey, you got someone logged for cell 6 in the basement?" There was a pause, static crackling over the radio. And the reply I got was, "Nope, all holding cells downstairs are supposed to be empty tonight." "Are you sure you're looking at cell 6? I glanced back at the man. He was still sitting there. "Yep, positive." "Hang tight, I'll double check," the dispatcher replied, her voice suddenly tight. I put the radio down. My eyes stayed locked on the figure. Something about him felt off. His clothes looked like something from the 1950s. A faded brown coat, frayed slacks, no shoes. I walked slowly down the hallway toward the cell. Each step echoed like I was stomping in a cathedral. The lights above me flickered slightly the closer I got, and the cold intensified. When I reached cell 6, I stood there gripping my flashlight tightly, even though I hadn't turned it on. "Sir?" I asked, but no response. I looked closer. His face was turned just enough that I could see one wide open eye, but glassy, almost like it wasn't real. "Sir, can you hear me?" Still nothing. Then I noticed something that made the hair on my arms stand up. There were no shadows. It was like he had just been placed there, like he didn't belong to the room. All of a sudden, I felt sick and took a step back. Suddenly, all the cell doors behind me slammed shut at the same time. The sound echoed down the hallway like thunder, and I jumped with my heart racing and spun around with my flashlight raised. But no one was there. All the doors were locked. I turned back to cell 6. It was empty. The man was gone. I unlocked the door, confused and a little shaken. Then I stepped inside. There was nothing. Just an old cot, a rust stain on the wall, and a smell like wet stone. Then the radio crackled. "Echo 9, come in. We just did a full count. No one has been booked or placed in any basement cell for the last 48 hours. Do you copy?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, copy." I didn't say what I saw. Not yet, as all I needed was to be sure I wasn't just imagining things. I started thinking if it was stress, or maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Because that wasn't the last time I saw him. Over the next 2 months, he showed up 3 more times. Always in cell 6. Silent and always staring at the corner. Sometimes I heard soft tapping, like fingernails on the bars. There was a time I heard whispering like someone speaking backward, too quiet to understand. Then one night, it got worse. I was walking past the cells during a routine check. Everything was quiet. Then I heard a voice behind me. "You see me now." I froze and turned around. Cell 6 was open. Inside, the man was standing, and the worst part, his mouth was sewn shut with thick black thread, sloppy and rushed, like someone did it in a hurry. I stepped back, then he moved. He didn't walk, but glided. It was like something invisible was pulling him forward. He floated to the bars slowly until his face was right in front of mine. His stitched mouth twitched, then the thread split apart, tearing as his jaw dropped open far too wide like a snake. And from that dark, gaping mouth came the words, "Stay with me." I ran. I can't even remember how I got upstairs. All I could remember was pushing past 2 other officers and locking myself in the locker room, gasping for breath, unable to speak. After that, I refused to work night shifts at Echo Station. I transferred out within a month. But here's the thing. Every now and then, I have this strange dream of the hallway. I see the old light flicker. I see the man in the coat standing in cell 6. Sometimes he's sitting, sometimes he's standing, and sometimes he's outside the cell, watching. And in those dreams, I always hear him whisper, "You see me now, so now you belong." Since that transfer, I've done everything I can to forget the horrible experience. I changed precincts, changed routines. I even moved cities, but it followed me. It always follows you. A few weeks ago, I was doing a late night patrol, my first one in years. Everything had been quiet and peaceful. I'd started convincing myself it was all some stress-induced delusion, a bad memory distorted by fear. But then, my cruiser radio crackled, just like the one back at Echo Station. Except, this time it didn't come from dispatch. It was soft, low, and sounded wrong. "Stay." I slammed on the brakes with my hands shaking. I glanced at the radio. That's when I noticed it was on the wrong frequency. It was just static. But I heard that voice. I know I did. It was the same one from the basement, the same one that whispered to me through sewn lips. I stepped out of the cruiser to clear my head with the engine still running, the hum giving me something to hold on to. I paced along the edge of the road, breathing in the cold night air, trying to convince myself it was just stress or just leftover fear. Then the headlights cut out. Everything went black. I turned toward the cruiser with my stomach twisting. And there he was. He was not inside this time around, but at the same time, not far away. He was standing just behind the car, right at the edge of the darkness where the taillights fade out. All of a sudden, I became frozen as I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. He tilted his head slowly, like he was studying me. Then I heard it again, but not through the radio this time, but from him. His mouth was open now. Black stitches were gone, and from that cold, empty mouth came the same words. "You see me now." I blinked, and he was gone. The headlights snapped back on. The engine still purred, the radio was silent. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. That man from cell 6, he'd found me. And something told me he wasn't going to leave this time. Later that night, I looked in the mirror and something felt wrong. My reflection didn't look right for a second. I saw a shape behind me. The head was tilted, just like before. Now every time the lights flicker or every time I'm alone, I still feel him watching and waiting for me. It's like he's just out of sight, waiting for me to let my guard down. Because sometimes it's not the living you should be afraid of, but it's what waits in the silence or in the shadows. So you should know now that law enforcement isn't just about catching bad guys. Sometimes the real horrors lurk in the places no one wants to talk about. Dark woods, silent hallways, the spaces between sleep and waking. These officers thought they were trained for anything, but nothing prepares you for what watches from the shadows. If these stories left you uneasy, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Insidious Inc. for more terrifying real-life encounters. and let us know in the comments. What would you have done if you were in their shoes? Because out there, something's always watching. Thank you for watching. See you soon.